I'm Jeffrey Siegel, the host of the Mystic Journey podcast. I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Today, we look to enlighten and enliven you with a thought-provoking discussion with one of the community's most successful and inspiring individuals. Everyone has a story, a life journey, a mystic journey. Today, our guests will share with you their personal journey, along with some of their secrets and some of the tools they utilize to get where they are today. Sit back and enjoy our conversation and look forward to being uplifted and emboldened with a positive discussion that may just propel you onto a new path or the next step in your own mystic journey. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Mystic Journey podcast. This is Jeffrey Siegel, your host, and I'm so happy you chose to join us. As I said, this is our first podcast, and we're going to be joined by an amazing first guest, Ben Decker, who I will introduce momentarily. But first, I just wanted to make a brief statement about the podcast and my mission for this podcast, what I wanted to be for everyone. As you know, or may know, or now know, I have two stores in Santa Monica, California, Mystic Journey Bookstore and Mystic Journey Crystals. And the name of the store was important, Mystic Journey. And it really relates to the name of this podcast and what it's about, the Mystic Journey podcast, because I believe that everyone is on a mystic journey, a life journey. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about exploring other people's mystic journey. I'm going to be bringing in some of the world's most successful, interesting people and have them share their mystic journey. We'll delve into how they became either influential and or impactful. And I'm going to ask them to share some of their secrets and some of the tools they utilize to get where they are today. Our guests will impart their wisdom so that you, our listeners, can learn from it and hopefully have their wisdom impact your lives. We have authors, entertainers, spiritual thinkers, athletes, healers, and teachers. What we want to do is to inspire and provoke your thoughts and provoke you to take the next step in your life, wherever that may be. So I'm going to get right into it with Ben Decker. Again, I hope that you enjoy this and you'll join us again on future podcasts. My intention is to do these every other week, and I hope you'll be with us. And so with that as a little background, let me introduce my wonderful first guest, Ben Decker. Ben is a meditation teacher, an activist, and a best-selling author. He has multiple books out, including Modern Spirituality, a guide to the heart of meditation, as well as practical meditation for beginners. And he also has a podcast show called the Modern Spirituality Show. Ben has been featured in multiple publications, including the New York Times, Rolling Stone Magazine, Forbes, and LA Yoga. And I've known Ben for a number of years now. He was instrumental in helping me begin my mystic journey, Crystal Gallery, and I've just always been so impressed with him. He's an amazing teacher. He's an amazing communicator, and he's an amazing individual who brings others together and allows them to grow and to blossom as a combination of two people. And so with that, let me say, hi, Ben. Welcome to the Mystic Journey podcast.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on the new show.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you to be my first guest. So let me begin. I know some of the people out there probably know you and have read, one or more of your books. But if you could just give our listeners a little bit of background in your, growing up, just sort of your I don't know, childhood, teenage, university years of life, so that we have a little background, and then we can start to delve into where your mystic journey really began.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. You know, I think that the most important thing for me to say, as far as like self introduction comes, is that I love learning, and to learn about something that is special or new or different or hidden or miraculous or that stretches the mind, that kind of learning has been sort of like the thing that kept me alive. So I have navigated depression and and other trauma responses throughout my life, like most people, right? And I was raised really religious. I'm a descendant of the founding pioneer families of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Most of my family went to BYU. In fact, I briefly, for one heartbeat, lived in Rexburg, Idaho, and considered the possibility of attending Brigham Young University, Idaho. And but I was extremely depressed, and throughout my life, religion and spirituality was such a core part of it. I was baptized into the church when I was 8 years old. That was a very mystical experience in a lot of unexpected ways. I joined the priesthood at age 12. I became deacons quorum president, which is like a 13-year-old leadership position. I was then teachers quorum president, which is like my 15-year-old leadership position. I became a priest at age 16. Um, you know, Throughout all of that, all the while having a lot of conflict uh, with religion, with church, with the experience of it, with not understanding it, and also deep and sincere curiosity and reverence for it.
Interesting. Well, two questions. I mean, first, just for folks, I just want to make sure they're aware that the church that you're speaking of would more commonly be known as the Mormon Church or the Mormons, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so, so it sounds to me like there wasn't an event or a moment where spirituality or your mystic journey um, along a path of spirituality suddenly happened. It sounds like you were almost born into or and had a natural organic involvement in religion and I'll say spirituality, although maybe that isn't the word you would use.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I was born into something that I frankly didn't have a choice regarding.
Like so
Um,
many, probably, right?
exactly. And for me, I remember my mom gave me a book, The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, when I was a little kid. I learned to read, a bit younger, not any kind of genius prodigy or anything like that, but I learned to read a bit younger than I think kids average my age. I read more rigorously, read more advanced books. One of the books I learned how to read words out of is a 2-inch thick book called Mormon Doctrine by Bruce R. McConkie, one
Wow.
of the early elders of the Mormon Church. And it's essentially an an outline of all of the Mormon cosmology, and I actually did my best. I remembered I wanted my eyes to scan every word of it. I had this sense that my memory would retain every bit of it, and at any point I could recall it, which
Wow.
I haven't been able to really do, but I had that sort of. I don't know if someone told me that or if I just thought that I could do that, but you know how little kids have ideas.
Yeah.
And so for me, I found I was in a family that said, look, God is real. God knows you. God knew you very, very closely and loves you and misses you and lives in another dimension and is watching you right now and is holding space for you. There are so many ancestors and angels that are also here. And there's also one mega big, great spirit that we call the Holy Spirit, who you can talk to at any time, who knows anything and can do anything, and has your back like on another level no matter what. Also, you're going to get hurt in this life, you're going to die at some point, and death is not the end, but your life is so important. So what you do right now is like super important. You got to make really good decisions, so there's a really crucial imprint of a worldview, a very thorough worldview imprinted really, really young.
It sounds to me, I mean, the what you've just, laid out, I mean, to me, in listening to it, I mean, sounds positive and nice. And
Right.
so it leads me to ask, I guess, or question, a follow-up question. I mean, and the initial question would be, when you, this word I'm going to use, it has a just sort of a negative connotation, but I don't mean it that way. But when you were learning this, when you were indoctrinated into the Mormon religion at the
Mhm.
outset, did you have an affinity for it, and did it, did you flow in and enjoy it? And then the follow-up question was, was there a time or an event when, that if you had that, affinity or connection, that it either took a shock or started to fade?
Well, great question. And what you're hearing as I describe it is you're hearing what I've kept, Um, so it sounds positive because of the trauma work that I've done, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds positive because I've worked very hard in my heart and in my spirit and in my mind, and even in my body to release the parts of the experience that were excruciating and painful and traumatizing, and to just as open-heartedly and mercifully as possible embrace my family, you know
And
for all that they tried and all that they did offer, you know.
and so then that leads me to ask, really, still the same follow-up question. I mean, was there some, I mean, whether it's the cliche of the straw that broke the camel's back, or
Right.
some particular event, was there something that led you to make the decision, and I don't want this to be presumptuous, but to move away from the Mormon church, the Mormon teachings?
I look at it as not necessarily moving away from, even though by many accounts that would appear to be the case. I look at it as an expansion from.
And so in that expansion, well, let me ask one question, and then I'll ask someone. When do you believe that expansion started to
Mhm.
occur? I mean, was it at 15 or 20 or 30?
Well, I think little by little there were breadcrumbs from the universe and from my heart that felt a little along the way like I had to that I was playing along, that I had to participate in order to protect myself. I felt intimidated to participate in some situations. Like I said, many situations I didn't have a chance. I really relied. I actually was very I resonated a lot with and related to when I first learned the story of the Dalai Lama. I had no idea what a Dalai Lama was. I had never heard of anything about him. Um, but when I heard about him sort of just being born and thrust into a situation where he was told that he was going to do something and that he was somebody and then he was trained to do it. When I learned, I watched some news, mini documentary or special on him or something when I was a young kid, and I felt like him. I was like, they were talking about what that must have been like for a little kid, and I was a little kid, and I was watching that, and I was like, that's my life. That's happening to me right now. They're telling me that that I have this important mission in the world, that I'm part of this special community who decided before I was born that I was going to helps create the situation where Jesus could return to the earth, and there would be world peace, and so at a really young age I related to that, and so I actually followed the Dalai Lama. My mother's name synchronistically happens to also be Karma. So there's a number of books that people had given her with the word karma in the title, um, as sort of as joke gifts. But I actually had a lot of Tibetan Buddhism, surprisingly, for a Mormon kid in Illinois. Um, I actually had a lot of exposure to that at a really young age. And so to answer the question specifically about the straw that broke the camel's back was, the real situation, the real deal moment. Okay. Like I had already been studying astrology and going to church. I had already studied elemental magic and gone to church. I had already studied Egyptian spirituality and indigenous traditions and still kept going to the Mormon church. I already studied Buddhism and the Vedic traditions and became a Reiki master and was a hypnotherapist and a yoga instructor while I still went to church. So that point that you're talking about was when I stopped going to church, and I was like, actually, like, love you, bye. That moment was, I guess, about age 20.
And what caused that decision to stop going to church?
I think that it the performance of pretending I was okay. I think I was away from my family. I lived in Los Angeles. I had my own space. My heart couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, look, I can't play anymore. I can't perform anymore. I have to really, really live. And if God's real, I need to go find God. And it was almost like that moment the Hercules myth where his like parents say, you look, your dad's actually Zeus, so you need to go to God now. And he has to leave and go to Mount Olympus. It's like I had to have that moment where it was like, that's so good that I've had all these experiences and all this training and all this learning, but now I have to go inside my heart and find the real God, because I think there is one, and I don't think that these people have, the exclusive content on God that they believe they have.
And it sounds like getting to this point, though, it was a gradual build up to this point rather than some specific event, a moment in time.
Right. There wasn't a specific cataclysmic event, but I could say, there were explosions throughout my tumultuous childhood. In many ways, I had a really, really blessed, abundant, safe, perfect childhood. But you know what else? I related to learning about what it was like for Prince William and Prince Harry growing up. I learned. I remember watching some kind of news special and learning about them too, and I related to that too, where it was like, okay, they have to go perform now, and when you're in the church and when you're in the priesthood, you wear the uniform and you show up early and you do all the rituals and everyone watches you do all the rituals and you have to do them all just right, and then all the adults are talking about how you did it. And so I related to Prince Harry and Prince William.
A lot of judgment.
A lot of judgment, the whole world just saying whatever they want. This one picked their nose, that one said whatever to their classmate, and it sounded just like what the adults at church were saying about us, and even being Mormon, was very unusual. So I went to public schools, and there may have been 2, 3 other Mormon kids at the school,
Right.
but um, we're definitely not the normal religion. It's
And how
definitely an unusual community
and
to be a part of.
how did your parents and your friends react when you decided to stop going to church?
I think because it was so gradual, they were like, I think they were disappointed. I think many of them had gone out of their way to try to set me straight, or convince me to do this or that. But what I wasn't getting was the sincere depth of inquiry, like my mystic journey. Like I wasn't getting that within that community, because that community thought they had it all completely figured out. And they would say things like, well, we don't know. Some things need to be left to personal revelation. You have to pray. You have to ask God. And I'm so grateful that I was taught that, because I do that. But but the but it's more about what you practice than what you preach, right?
Yeah.
And the experience in organized religion for me has has been a really hard one, to be honest. A really hard one to my heart wants to be open to it. My heart loves the idea of spiritual ceremony in a community. But I had to start to really, really explore, broaden my horizons in a way that I never had before. And I think many of the friends and family who were watching me as I started to blossom in that way at that time, because I was quite open about it. I think many of them were triggered by it. Many of them were jealous. Many of them were inspired.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, or makes me think of, people who, let's say, are living somewhere. I'm gonna bring up a book too, but living somewhere, and there's a whole group of people, and then this person decides to leave and go explore, and the other people are, I like the word, envious of them,
Right.
stepping out. There's a book by Richard Bach called Illusions. I think it's called
Yes.
Illusions, where there's this like a muscle that's attached to a barnacle, and everybody's like, you can never leave you can never detach yourself. If you go out in the ocean, you'll die. And this creature actually detaches and goes out, and then comes back and says how great it was. I mean, but everybody
Wow.
then was envious, all the other barnacles.
Hmm.
So let me ask this. Let me sort of turn the focus a little bit to um, a more the more practical aspect of your life. So you said that this occurred, while you were around, let's just say around 20. So that were you in university at that time? And then when at that time, and as you moved on, I mean, you're look to for me now, Ben. I mean, you're a significant pillar of our community. You're so involved with so many people and so many things, and you're so well known. That just didn't happen out of the blue. So I'm wondering, from the time that you began this expansion and from the church, how did that occur? How did that transition begin and then blossom over time?
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. It's really an honor to hear that. For for me, we were raised mowing people's lawns and building people's houses and fixing their roofs and raking their leaves, and making them meals when someone just had surgery, or when someone was sick, or they or we were, the families would babysit. Mormons are a very close knit community, and it's very committed to something that they call the law of consecration, and which essentially says that everything is God's,
Mm-hmm.
and and everything is God's. Our bodies belong to God. Our money is God's. Our resources and property is all, it's all God's. The entire planet's God's. Everything is and always will be belong to God. And I remember we were helped. We were poor. I remember my parents sitting us down, saying that there were people who needed more than us, so Santa wasn't going to be bringing us very many gifts this year. And then on Christmas morning, someone showed up dressed as Santa and gave us all these gifts, and my parents weren't expecting them. And it was someone from church who had, collected some gifts for each of us. And it was love, it was community love. And I think that when I realized I wasn't really being met with understanding, respect, especially for my sexuality, or my curiosities and my interests, because I was so unusual. I was a creative, I was an artist, I was a performer, I was out of the box in a lot of ways. And so that time that I no longer, I know there I no longer felt like I could pretend that I felt welcome. And so then I desperately needed to feel welcome somewhere. I needed friends. I needed a new family. I felt that my family wasn't there anymore for me. And I I went to every bookstore and every metaphysical bookstore, every yoga studio. I just went everywhere, and I just wanted to meet these people who were
This
trying.
is still in Illinois?
This is actually truthfully everywhere. Illinois, I graduated high school in Ohio. I went to college in Idaho for a minute, and then, before I turned 19, I was in Los Angeles.
Oh.
Um, so by the time I got to Los Angeles, I was at the Bodhi tree.
What,
A couple years later, of course, I loved Mystic Journey, and still love Mystic Journey. And for me, it was like the biggest win. It was like such a beautiful gift. And I literally thanked the creator of the universe that I got to do something with you, with Mystic Journey Bookstore.
what brought you to what was the inspiration to bring you? I mean, look, there's 1,000 cities and a dozens of big cities in the U.S. What brought you to come to Los Angeles?
This is going to sound totally new agey and crazy and blah 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 and all the
Not on
things.
this podcast.
Well, I felt called here.
Yeah.
I thought it's the city of angels. I thought, I was deeply heartbroken. I had experienced trauma as a kid. My family put me into conversion therapy as a teenager. I was in rigorous religious training, on top of school, on top of like all the extracurriculars at school, performing at high levels. Um, and I was deeply frozen and lost and traumatized. And people would remember me as being very charismatic and social, but we have to also remember, like, those are coping mechanisms in their own way. um, I lied all the time. I lied about everything. I said whatever I thought would make me feel safe, whatever I thought the other person wanted to hear. So teens were a really gnarly time, and I really never planned much of a life, because I thought for sure there was this whole thread of that darkness and depression through my life, where I thought for sure at some point I would have died by suicide.
I certainly wouldn't have thought that from knowing you over the last 5 years ago, because you come across as such a light. I mean, um, you came to LA. You said you were called here. I mean, when you came here, did you? I mean, what did you get, an apartment and just get any job you could? What were you seeking to do, or did you even know you just wanted to be here?
I was, I've been an actor my whole life. So I loved performing. I got so much out of playing different characters. I loved exploring different perspectives and different worlds and times and all that, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to become an actor, and sure, it'll be really hard, but I'll have my own back. I'll be there. I'm tenacious. I'm strong. I'm good at things. I can do this. And I came out here, and the depression hit me so hard. I could barely go to an audition. I barely got any auditions. When I did finally, get my headshot and get into an acting class and all that, I barely got any auditions. And when I did, I would have crippling anxiety. I would just deliver nothing in the auditions. I was like an empty shell. And the anxiety was
Let's
just
go back
eating
to your
away.
childhood in the Mormon church.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
was all momentum, this like trauma momentum that it was like my body knew, okay, now we can actually start to unpack some of this. And sorry, Ben, you're not ready to go be on camera.
And so, I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I mean, the question just comes to my mind. So from this state of anxiety and depression, what started to bring you out and into a different direction? Because I've never known you as an actor really.
Hmm.
And so you
Hmm.
must have gone in some different direction. What catalyzed you to make some shift?
Well, I was committed to fully being an actor and only an actor and blah blah blah, which is so funny because anyone who knows me now doesn't know that part of me at all,
Yeah.
like you just said. uh, and but I really needed a job. I needed work. I was staying at friends' places and friends of friends' places, and I had a lot of very dangerous experiences that right at that time, 18, 19, 20. I got involved with whoever, it's like vulnerable kid, ostracized, exiled from his community in the big city. Like, you know in the entertainment industry, I was ripe for, I was very attractive to the predatory type,
Uh-huh.
um and I was taken advantage of in a bunch of situations, and I just went into a deeper, darker place, and I accepted whatever work could come. And one thing led to another, and before you know it, I'm working because of my sister-in-law. She grew up in Burbank, worked at Warner Brothers. She got me a job at Warner Brothers.
Hmm.
Um, did a terrible job there, got fired immediately. But while I was there, met somebody else at a different department of Warner Brothers who hired me. Um, and I started to work. One thing leads to another. I'm working in PR and entertainment PR, and they're saying, "Look, you cannot go on auditions. You can't go be an actor and a publicist." I hear that that's different now, but at the time they were like, no, we do not want some 18-year-old, 19-year-old actor playing publicist during the week and skipping out, middle of the day for random auditions and ready to quit at any time. We need to know you're a real committed publicist. Can you do that? And I had never wanted that, and I wasn't that, but I was desperate, and I said yes. So
That
I
was the
took
beginning of the change.
Yeah, that was the big change right there.
Wow. I never knew that.
Hmm.
And so then once you got into PR, how did that unfold and take off? Because that really, to me, I mean, you're you're brilliant at that. Like I said at the beginning, bringing people together and
Hmm.
bringing out the best in people and really working to have other people learn about the people you represent.
Yeah, I got really good at the basics on that job. It was like the best paid internship that you could ever have, working in PR at a couple different firms. And I learned about writing press releases, the kinds of things that you write, the way to approach different kinds of tricky situations, how you actually permeate uh, consciousness with an idea or with a brand or with a message, with a campaign, and I learned the life cycle of campaigns. I learned about reinvention and resurgence and all these things that were just like you had to do them. I had to go from barely being able to walk to like sprinting on a treadmill around all these heavy hitters.
Learn on the
um,
fly.
I was 19 years old when I first met George Clooney, and it was in a professional context. And just a couple years later, it was like Hugh Hefner and Robert Downey Jr. and all these for a kid, a Mormon kid from the Midwest, is very seductive, very hypnotic, very entrancing. And I want to say that for a second there, I fell for it. I fell for the Hollywood glam. I fell for the story. And
Most would.
and one thing leads to another, and I had a shock to the system. But do you know what? I was so desensitized, it didn't shock me enough. And it was when I started to work with a friend of one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And 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 this woman who was on the show was such a lovely woman, and she was so sweet to me, and she was so kind, and I had so many wonderful encounters with her. And one day, and her husband seemed perfectly lovely as well. He was very kind to me every time I met him. And then one day he dies by suicide. He
Oh,
hung
Lord.
himself.
Wow.
And and I was stunned, and I binged all of the media about it, and I read everything I could. And it was like, wow, the pressure of the viciousness of this industry, of this community that's surrounding the show, of the tabloid media, of all of this just really ruined this man's will to live. It didn't cause it, but wow, there was it really stunned me. And then about 1 year later, someone much closer to me, who was also part of that group of friends, also died by suicide. And that one, as my depression was so heavy the months leading up to that. And and I was already doing everything I could to be of service, to get out. I was doing anti-human trafficking work. I was engaging with nonprofits, doing water wells. I was like, I'm using my PR magic for good. I don't want any of this. It's too much. But then the straw that broke the camel's back in that season of my life was when that my second friend, my much closer friend, who died by suicide. And I was like, okay, you know what? No more of any of this. Goodbye.
And,
And I right then I transitioned out of PR completely. I made sure whatever clients wanted to still receive PR, I got them with a trusted colleague at another firm, and I dropped it. And I was like, bye. And right at that time, that's when we opened Full Circle in Venice, the spiritual
wow.
center on Rose.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Because I remember Full Circle. I mean, it was actually, um, it happened, around that. I mean, Mystic Journey was, I remember Full Circle being around when Mystic Journey was around,
Hmm.
and it was a happening place. A lot of community was going there. I mean, it was really, an important place and impactful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I was introduced to Andrew Keegan through Gabrielle Bernstein and Marianne Williamson. And
How did you know those two authors, those famous women?
Well, I knew Gabby from Marianne. I met Marianne through Alanis Morissette, who I was connected to through PR.
Hmm.
And it was the Alanis Morissette connection was really more like I was a super fan. And and she started to promote Marianne's congressional campaign.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's weird that Alanis Morissette's talking about some random Los Angeles congressional campaign. And I looked into it, and Marianne immediately felt like family to me. And she started to talk, and she was talking about politics, but she was also talking about social justice and spirituality.
So, the-
And I
is there?
wanted friends. I wanted friends. And so I was like, I like what this woman's talking about. And I was like, how can I help? I'll offer my PR services to your campaign. And and she was like, oh, I don't think we really have the budget for that. And I was like, I love what you're doing. Let me help for free. And I just volunteered, and I went to everything, and I just needed friends. I needed to be part of a community. I was raised in a 20 million person organized religion that's global, that has members in every single nation, you know? And we moved a lot growing up, and there was always a church and a temple to welcome us there. And they always knew who we were, and they always made us feel at home no matter where we were. And I was, for the first time in my life, not at home, and also not wanting to go back home. And so I think I was seeking home, and what Marianne was talking about, and just felt like home to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a safe person. This is like a safe person. This is way safer than a lot of the names I could drop that I was engaging with in PR. Like, wow,
So you were in PR then for quite a while, for a number of years.
yeah, I was. And I actually started my own firm. I did a lot of amazing charity work. Through that skill set that I had developed, I was able to contribute to a lot of organizations. I learned, wow, there's a lot of ways you can make a difference for people who are doing important things, you know. American Red Cross, a lot of anti human trafficking organizations, including Unlikely Heroes, International Justice Mission, Charity Water, Generosity Water. Uh, and I loved it. You know, there was this shift away from like the typical entertainment PR, and this big emphasis on philanthropic
That's
PR.
wonderful. And when did your endeavors into teaching meditation and being an author sort of weave into this transition or these two different avenues of your life?
Well, about that time, I had gotten really deep into my studies of Zen Buddhism. I was going to a lot of weekend retreats in at the Deer Park Monastery in Southern California. I also did the 3-year training at the Self Realization Fellowship in the Palisades. Took a ton of workshops and classes at Mystic Journey and at the Bodhi Tree. And had already been a yoga teacher, already a hypnotherapist, already a Reiki practitioner from before in Ohio when I was in high school. And so about that time that I wanted to, fully transition out of entertainment PR, and I met Marianne and we opened Full Circle, I just considered um, that an opportunity to apply all of those things that I had already learned. And I was like, I was like, what should I do? Should I do a hypnotherapy thing? Should I do a mindfulness thing? Should I do a Reiki thing? Because there weren't a lot of these things happening. So it felt like there was this beautiful, wide open opportunity to offer anything, and it would all be new. And I brought it to Marianne and to Andrew and to Gabby one night. And I was just met with so much receptivity, and Andrew had just acquired the lease to that beautiful building, 305 Rose Avenue in Venice. And he said, come do it there.
Wow.
And Marianne was like, yeah, you should definitely do that. That's perfect, And I did. I started to do a Sunday event. I called it Resonate. And I said, we're going to do a meditation. I'm going to have a little bit of a conversation with a guest, have some music. And before you know it, we've got all different kinds of people coming.
Hordes, lots of people.
Hordes of people.
Yeah, it was really
Lots of people.
amazing.
And we're in the news all the time, good and bad.
Yeah, no.
True and untrue,
But you made a big impact, like I said earlier, a big impact on the community. And then how did your writing begin?
I started to write actually for LA Yoga magazine. That was I of course had done a significant amount of copywriting and press release writing for when I was in PR. So I had gotten better at communicating, and of course was in a lot of therapy. So therapy plus writing press releases. I got good at communicating, and then I started to teach. I not only did my Sunday class, I also taught anywhere that would have me. I taught at the hospital, I taught at the library, I did free classes at the police department and at the fire department, and different kinds of nonprofit organizations. Got a couple businesses to bring me in to do some meditations. I did every certification I could find. I just was learning and teaching and learning and teaching, learning, sharing. And my articles in LA Yoga were a really fun. I was also society editor at one time of Beverly Hills Lifestyle magazine. So when I was in PR, I briefly held the title of society editor. I did all the features on special events that locals were hosting, local tastemakers, influencers, socialites, and that kind of thing. And so the writing I had gradually become more comfortable with the written word. And one day, a publisher contacted me.
They contacted you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was
That's
scouted.
amazing.
Yeah. And they said, we've looked at some of the content that you've released. There's not anyone teaching like you out there. We have a book concept that we think, that they had drafted based on some of the materials I had out already. So I was contacted, and they had already created a concept based on what I was already teaching.
Wow.
So I was doing a lot of retreats and workshops and stuff at that time because I just loved it, and it was so healing, and it was bringing me out of that deep, dark place that I was in. And I saw other people. It was like I was half a step ahead of other people in my same situation. And so it was like I was able to pull people forward one step up the ladder. And it was like an adventure, and it was so beautiful, and it was so healing, and I felt so much love and acceptance, and it was like family happened, And then, unplugged meditation opened up, which was amazing. The Den meditation opened up. Wanderlust opened a center in Hollywood. There's a couple other beautiful places like Liberate and all the different yoga studios. And then, one day for me, you contacted me and you said, I want to expand the bookstore. I want to have a space big enough to sell, really big, impressive crystals. And if possible, I want to do some classes and events there.
Right. And then we made that happen.
Yeah. And in that experience, I was able to have your support. I felt like how I wanted to feel from, it's like how you want your family to celebrate you, And when that first book came out, everyone took such good care of me. The reason that's a bestseller, the reason it's in 15 languages or whatever, is because everyone helped,
Right.
you know?
And this is modern spirituality, yes?
This is actually practical meditation for beginners.
Okay, I apologize for that. I had
Yeah, that's my first book.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Um, and so how long has that been out now?
That one came out in 2017.
And then
And
modern spirituality?
Modern Spirituality came out in 2020.
And am I so
And then there's Meditations on Christ and Daily Mindfulness.
wow, you're prolific. And anything in the works?
I have I have a book I'm writing in the works
Okay.
that is being published by Sounds True.
Oh, impressive. That's awesome. Congratulations.
I'm
I won't
super excited about that. It's my first time working with Sounds True. I'm actually going to
okay.
be co-writing this one with my partner, Sa DeSimone.
Well, actually, this leads me to my next question. Then I sort of have a broad wrap up question for you.
Uh-huh.
But so where are you now? What are you doing now? I mean, really, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm so glad you've been sharing it so deeply with us. But what are you in addition to writing this new book? What are you doing now?
Well, um, I recently had a conversation with Marianne Williamson where she's on my 35th birthday. And she said, which I saw you that day too. You came to my surprise birthday party at home. Thank you for being there.
My pleasure.
But something Marianne said to me earlier in the day was, she said, "How old are you turning today?" And I said, 35. And she said, 35 feels like the beginning of serious adulthood somehow to me.
Okay.
And and at first glance, I was like, bitch, I'm a grown up. Okay. I've been a grown up for a long ass time. Okay. But then there was another part of me that really, really honored the words of my elder and my mentor and my teacher. And I just felt like, yes, I'm willing to claim that greater maturity, that greater responsibility, that more serious adulthood from life, and put more effort in, and be more prayerful and be more disciplined and take better care of myself, and show up better in my relationships. So I'm kind of coming out of a really inspiring um, spark of light that came recently. So I'm really excited about the next year ahead, because I'm going to be doing my annual ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica toward the end of the year. But leading up to that, I'm going to be doing uh, a retreat, two retreats in Peru and one retreat in Bali.
Wow.
The Modern Spirituality Show, the podcast is such an adventure, and I'm loving it so much, and it's such a gift. And I'm excited for you to be embarking on that journey too. It just changes everything. It's like so beautiful. And to be honest, I just am in so much gratitude um, for my health and for my ability to create and to be able to um, create professionally. That I'm just really trying to stay very focused with really honoring all of my partnerships, all of my commitments, all the apps I'm teaching for, the books I'm writing. Um, and in my heart, it's really about um, paying paying it forward, and just knowing that this is a community that has shown up for me. This is a community that's blessed by the work that we're doing. I want to contribute in a meaningful way. And to be honest, something that's so interesting, it's funny that we talked a little bit about acting. I actually signed up for my first acting class
Mhm.
in over 15 years.
Yeah, well, congrats. That's great. It's great that you're in a place where you want to go back to something that caused that was challenging in the past. So I think that
Yeah.
that's
And
fabulous.
you know what's amazing about it? I don't care anymore. I have a career. This doesn't need to be my career. So it's fun again, which is so amazing.
Yeah, fun is good. So so
Hmm.
let me ask you this. I mean, when you shared that you had just turned 35, I mean, it just like bammed me like right in the soul. That, I mean, you've shared this amazing story, this amazing journey. You've done so much already, and you're only 35. And to me, so many people, I do life coaching,
Hmm.
and I meet so many people both at Mystic Journey Bookstore, Mystic Journey Crystals, that I talk to people, and they're sort of stuck in their lives, and they really have not, I mean, they've not explored life that much. And so I want to ask if you would share, if you had some advice or guidance to give on how others can actually, I mean, use the word expand at the very beginning of our conversation, how
Hmm.
others could expand and take steps to, it doesn't have to be a complete, like, drop this and go to that, but
Hmm.
to expand their lives, to grow into other areas, and then maybe as things unfold, to really move in a new direction. You've had so much
Hmm.
experience in different things. I think you would be a wonderful teacher to share some ideas on that.
Well, thank you. The one piece of advice, it might be a little unexpected, but it's accept the unacceptable about yourself.
Hmm.
Those things about yourself, those big flaws, those big secret flaws, the mistakes that you've made that are just the hardest ones to ever say, that you would never want anyone to know. Those biggest, dirtiest, most humiliating secrets and qualities and defects, or whatever they are, or mistakes, we have to accept them and love ourselves, even though those are part of our story.
Wow.
And the reason that that's the key to expansion is because the reorientation to love is a priority corrector. And your priorities will be corrected, and you will see what needs to happen. You'll feel it, you'll meet the right people, you'll feel good about certain things, you won't feel good about other things. Something will change, and it'll change in the way towards your greatest, most authentic path when you accept yourself exactly as you are.
Well, thank you, Ben. That was wow, that was moving and beautiful. And so really thank you so much for sharing that. Um,
My honor.
and
Thank you.
and
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me
yeah,
here.
but before you go, I mean, if people wanna find you, reach out to you, connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
The best way is on the Modern Spirituality Show, my podcast. I On all of our show notes, we have all of our emails and all of that kind of thing. But Instagram, on Benjamin W. Decker, I'm there every day. Um, yeah, and I post all my retreats and everything in the link tree and all that on Instagram. So the podcast and Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, Ben, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the Mystic Journey podcast, for being my first guest on the inaugural show, and more than anything, thank you for being my friend.
Thank you so much. You've been a great friend to me too. Thank you, Jeff.
And everybody who's listened, thank you for joining us. I'm so appreciative of that. Again, I hope you continue to join us for further interesting and inspiring conversations. And we will be back again in a couple of weeks. Everybody, stay well, stay healthy and happy, and we'll be back again soon. Thanks so much. Bye bye. Thank you for joining us today on the Mystic Journey podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and look forward to having you back again for our next podcast. If you have any questions about what you heard on the podcast today, or would like to share your thoughts on the podcast in general, please feel free to email me at jeff@mysticjourneyla.com. Until next time, stay positive, see the beauty in all things, and keep your mind focused on creating exactly what you want in your life.